Alright, before we dive into this, let's clear up a couple things. We're talking about Prince of Persia, the Sands of Time saga, not the old school trilogy from the 80s and 90s, you know, the ones where the prince had about 2 pixels of facial expression and died if he sneezed near a spike trap. Those are classics, but today we're focusing on the reboot, the one that turned Prince into a wall-running, time-bending parkour legend. Technically, the Sands of Time saga has 3 main games, but there are others that sneak in between. Prince of Persia, the Forgotten Sands, which happens between the Sands of Time and Warrior Within, and Battles of Prince of Persia, which fits between the Sands of Time and Warrior Within as well, which also happens after the Forgotten Sands. So yeah, the timeline gets a little messy, but that's all part of the chaotic time-bending fun of this series. Also, we're skipping Revelations and Rival Swords. Why? Because they're basically the same games, just ported to the PSP with some tweaks, a few extra areas here, some gameplay adjustments there. The story is pretty much exactly the same. Now, fair warning, the Sands of Time saga loves time travel, like a lot. So the timeline can get messy, loops, rewinds, paradoxes, you name it, and to make things even more fun, Ubisoft never really gave us exact dates for when any of this happens, but don't worry, I've pieced everything together as clearly as possible. Alright, deep breath, ready? Let's rewind time and get started. Our story begins outside of time itself, yeah, that far back. Before any kingdoms, before any history books, there was this massive place called the Fortress of Time, sitting on, you guessed it, the Island of Time. Subtle naming, right? Here the Empress of Time was busy creating the Sands of Time, and if you haven't noticed yet, this game really wants to remind you it's about time. Like, if Time had a sponsorship deal, this game would be the poster child. So this Empress of Time, who was literally created by the gods themselves, shows up on the island and basically says, yeah, this will do, and immediately puts the locals to work. She enslaves villagers, builds her massive Fortress of Time, while her Imperial guards make sure nobody's taking extended lunch breaks. And yeah, she's kind of a baddie, not in the woe queen slay way, she's more like enslaves an entire island way. But trust me, you'll really understand what I mean later on. Once the Fortress of Time was complete, nobody really knows what happened to the poor villagers who built it, but let's be honest, if they didn't escape, they probably didn't get a retirement plan. Either they ended up as sand creatures or there's the skeletons decorating the place like cursed lawn ornaments. Meanwhile, the Empress of Time gets comfy in her throne room, creating the Sands of Time with no interruptions, no warriors, no princes, no chaos yet. Remember, we're going in chronological order here, so all of that Warrior Within business hasn't happened. The freshly made sands stayed locked inside the fortress, guarded by the Empress herself, with sand creatures and a loyal servant Shadi. Many years later, word about the Island of Time starts spreading, and one guy in particular, known as the Maharaja, decides he wants in. Maharaja basically means great king, as in the ruler of India. So yeah, this guy is kind of a big deal. He learns about the artifacts of time, a powerful collection that includes the hourglass, the staff, the medallion, and the dagger. The cool part, those last 3 can actually protect their ruler from the sand's corruption. Basically an anti-sand sunscreen, but magic. So the Maharaja sets sail to the island with his crew, and right on arrival, surprise, they're greeted by a warm welcome party of sand creatures. Despite the chaos, the Maharaja somehow managed to reach the hourglass of time before he was, well, almost turned into dust himself. Alright, here's where things start to melt your brain a little. There's actually another timeline. Yeah, because one clearly wasn't complicated enough. In this alternate version, instead of finding the hourglass, the Maharaja discovers something called the Mask of the Wraith. Now, the mask basically says, hey, want to redo your life? Whoever wears it becomes a Sand Wraith, a creepy time warp version of themselves who travels back to the original timeline to stop their past self from messing up. Think of it as a cosmic try again button, but cursed. Here's where things get real confusing. Based on what we've seen in games, this means that there are 2 versions of the same person existing at once, the original and their spooky sand clone. And because Time is a drama queen, one of them has to die to set things right. If the Sand Wraith dies, the original timeline stays, but if the original dies, the mask falls off, revealing the Sand Wraith as the new original. Yeah, I told you this series was about time, but apparently it's also about giving quantum physicists a headache. Anyways, back to the chaos, the Sand Wraith Maharaja actually manages to pull it off. He kills the attacker who would have killed his past self, effectively saving, well, himself. The timeline sighs in relief, the Mask of the Wraith falls off, and boom, the Maharaja is back in business, now officially replacing his original version. After all that interdimensional stress, he leaves a few cryptic engravings scattered around the fortress ruins and then takes the artifacts of time with him before heading home. And now, finally, we reach the main timeline, the start of the Sands of Time itself. Many years later, the ruler of Persia, King Shahraman, sets out on a royal trip with his son, known only as the Prince. Yeah, no name again. First the Maharaja, now this guy. Apparently, anyone who messes with time loses the right to be identified. On their journey to the kingdom of Azad, they pass through India, where Shahraman meets the Maharaja's advisor, a frail, dying man known as the Vizier. And oh boy, this guy is basically the can I speak to your manager of villains. He convinces Shahraman and his army to attack the Maharaja's kingdom, promising them honor and glory. Then, in true backstabbing fashion, the Vizier kills one of the guards at the palace gates and fires a flaming arrow into the sky, the signal for Shahraman's army to attack. What a team player. The attack begins. Shahraman's army storms the Maharaja's palace, and the Vizier, ever the helpful consultant, whispers in the king's ear about the legendary treasure vaults. Because of course, the motivation for most villains is greed with the side of chaos. Meanwhile, the prince, young, naive, and just arrogant enough to think he's the main character of the game, wait, barrels into the palace, eager to prove that he's got what it takes. Naturally, the palace doesn't appreciate his enthusiasm. As the walls start collapsing, he's thrown from his horse, but somehow manages to slip through the chaos just before he's been squashed by falling debris. Close call, buddy. Inside, some of Shahriman's soldiers try to force their way deeper into the palace. Spoiler, it doesn't go well. A perfectly timed catapult attack smashes them, blocking the door even further and leaving the prince to figure things out on his own. Classic. After a quick round of what I can only describe as tutorial parkour, the prince is off and running. Literally, he's dodging guards, flipping ledges, and narrowly avoiding random fireballs like he's some kind of acrobatic pinball. Honestly, this guy is really well trained for this, or maybe he's just that lucky. Eventually, our hero reaches the vault. By all logic, anyone else in his shoes would probably be terrified, but the prince is immediately drawn to a shiny hourglass and a small, suspiciously important dagger. Of course, naturally, he does a little parkour dance around the vault to snag the dagger. Cue debris falling from above, almost a total squash, but hey, protagonism luck strikes again. Thanks to a quick rewind, he notices the rock sooner, avoids it, and watches as it destroys part of the platform he just stood on. No big deal, just another Tuesday in the life of a time-manipulating prince. Triumphant, he tucks his very valuable dagger under his belt and makes his way back to his father, who, for reference, has already grabbed the hourglass, a diplomatic gift for the Sultan of Azad. Meanwhile, the vizier, still seething and looking like he's the one who's got many bad years, demands the dagger. Remember, the guy was promised any treasure he wanted from the Maharaja's hoard. Naturally, Shahriman refuses. Why? Because the prince earned it, fair and square. Sorry, vizier, no dagger for you. As they leave India, the Persians take a few prisoners along for the ride, including the Maharaja's daughter, Princess Farah, and let me tell you, she does not look impressed. In fact, she practically radiates "I am not amused" energy directly at the prince. Oof. Awkward first impressions, check. When they finally arrive in Azad, King Shahriman proudly presents the hourglass to his friend, the Sultan, as a look how strong our alliance is gift. And of course, the Sultan is absolutely blown away by its beauty, because who wouldn't be impressed by a giant magical hourglass full of time-manipulating sand? Enter the vizier, the absolute master of let's make everything worse. He knows about the sands and of course sees the perfect opportunity to put his plan into motion. Being the scum we all love to hate, he sweet-talks the prince into using the dagger of time to open the hourglass and release the sands. Cue Princess Pharaoh clearly has better instincts, yelling at the prince to stop because she knows exactly what kind of chaos this will unleash, but does our hero listen? Nope. He opens it anyway, setting stage for all evil, time-bending trouble to come. And now nightmare mode kicks in. The vizier grabs the scythe of time and suddenly chaos everywhere. The sands of time start swirling in a deadly sandstorm and everyone in the room begins to transform into, yep, sand creatures. Except of course the three people carrying the artifact of time. The prince with his dagger, Pharaoh with the medallion around her neck, and the vizier clutching the staff like it's a VIP pass to ultimate power. Naturally, the vizier tries to strong-arm the prince into handing over the dagger. Does the prince comply? Of course not. He grabs the dagger and makes a run for it, straight into the falling debris, because why would escaping evil ever be easy? The prince finally crashes into the reception room where Pharaoh and some of the sultan's court are scrambling for their lives from the rampaging sand creatures. Chaos everywhere, dust, screaming, vaguely humanoid monsters, the works. Luckily, they manage to escape through a door, which of course locks immediately after they pass through, because of course it does. Tension, check. Pharaoh steps up and starts schooling the prince. She explains how the dagger of time works, not just as a weapon against the sand creatures, but also some of its other abilities. Essentially, you're holding the key to winning this fight, genius. Now pay attention. And yes, he listens, eventually. If you're wondering why some people didn't turn into sand creatures immediately, it's simple. The sands haven't spread fast enough yet. Don't get too comfortable though, it's coming. And when it hits, things are going to get messy, fast. After taking down the sand creatures, the prince finally sees a way forward. The door in front of Pharaoh gives way just enough for him to squeeze through a small passage. Naturally, as soon as she starts running, the prince dashes after her. No hero ever lets the heroine go first, apparently. After a while flipping chase, Pharaoh corners the prince and does the classic give me the dagger of time move. She wants to undo his mistake, basically the same thing the vizier wanted. And now who do you trust? A slick backstabbing vizier who already ruined the Maharaja and King Shahriman's life, or an innocent princess perfectly justified in seeking revenge for her father's death? Tough call. Of course the prince says no. He's not exactly handing over the most powerful time-manipulating artifact of all time to anyone. But before they can argue further, Scarab's attack, forcing the prince to rush Pharaoh along. She reluctantly agrees to meet him later in the reception hall. In the next room, he spots something weird, even by sand creature standards. 3 giant birds carrying the hourglass towards the Tower of Dawn. Yep. Definitely a vizier special. Subtlety clearly isn't his strong suit. The prince continues his perilous castle tour, eventually reaching the Azad defense system. Here, a guard steps in to help solve the puzzle. Once the puzzle is solved, surprise, the guard immediately turns into a sand creature. Mega rip, buddy, thanks for your help. The prince finally reaches the reception hall, only to find Sarah knee-deep in sand creatures, fighting for her life. No big deal, right? Yeah, kind of a big deal. Amid the chaos, the prince comes face to face with his worst nightmare. His father, King Shahriman, has been turned into a sand creature. After taking down the monster, the prince finally realizes something important. The sands are way more dangerous than what he thought. So grudgingly, he decides to team up with Farah to stop the madness. But don't get too cozy yet, he still doesn't fully trust her, mainly because she did try to snatch the dagger away earlier. The Tower of Dawn, their next destination, though most of the adventure actually happens on the way there. As they climb, dodge, fight through traps and sand creatures, something unexpected starts to happen. The prince and Farah begin to genuinely connect. Remember the cocky, reckless kid who thought parkour was a personality trait? Yeah, he's slowly becoming more skilled and humble thanks to Farah. Along the way, his feelings start leaning towards romance. And Farah, she's not exactly hiding that she might feel the same. Together, they tackle all sorts of puzzles and obstacles. The prince handles the long, complicated routes with style, while Farah slips through tight spaces, finds shortcuts, and generally keeps him from running in circles. It's teamwork, and maybe a little sparks in the air chemistry too. Those sand pillar visions the prince keeps getting, they're basically a magical GPS for his life, showing him which paths to take, what he needs to do, and occasionally giving him nightmares. As the journey through Azad continues, the vision starts showing something unsettling. Farah is stealing the dagger of time from him. Naturally, this makes the prince start questioning her motives. Can he really trust her? Add that to Farah's increasingly aggressive and determined attitude as they press deeper into the palace, and suddenly their budding connection starts to crack. Sparks? Maybe. Trust issues? Definitely. The closer they got to the heart of Azad, the shakier the relationship becomes. Here's where we start seeing a real exchange of personalities between our heroes. At the start, the prince was basically an arrogant prick, cocky, self-assured, and a little full of himself. But as their journey progresses, we begin to see him soften a bit, becoming more skilled and slightly more humble. Not a total saint yet, but hey, progress counts. We'll see more of this development in the next games. Meanwhile, Farah follows almost the opposite path. She starts out humble and composed, but as the palace challenges pile up, she gradually becomes more assertive, even a little prickly, to the point where the prince finds himself questioning if she even understands the gravity of the situation. Their personalities are converging, clashing, and evolving all at once. A perfect recipe for tension, trust issues, and eventual sparks. At last, they need to reach the top of the Tower of Dawn. Farah tells the prince what needs to be done, climbing the top of the hourglass and use the dagger of time to put the sands back where they belong. Simple, right? Well, not for our prince. Instead of listening, he starts questioning Farah's motives, and can you blame him? After all, he's one of the main culprits behind this entire mess. Plus, let's not forget the raid back in India where her father was killed. From Farah's perspective, her skepticism, anger, and outright hatred towards the prince are probably at maximum capacity. And now, instead of a simple heroic moment, we've got a full-on moral and emotional showdown brewing at the very top of the tower. Unfortunately, there's no time for emotional debates or trust issues because the vizier decides to crash the party. He shows up flexing his control over the sands of time and blasts both of them with a wave power that sends the prince flying off the top of the hourglass like a ragdoll. The dagger of time slips from his hand, landing dangerously close to the vizier. Farah is left hanging, literally, and the prince, instead of thinking twice, does the unthinkable. He leaps to save her. In a single desperate move, he manages to grab the dagger before the vizier can reach it, saving both Farah and the one weapon that stands between them and total sandy annihilation. The two crash into a dark pit that leads straight into what looks like a tomb, because apparently this day can get any worse. Beaten down and hopeless after the fight with the vizier, they start wandering, trying to find a way out. It's here that Farah notices something unexpected. The prince is claustrophobic, which suddenly explains a lot, like why she's always the one squeezing through tight spaces while he's busy climbing 50-foot walls instead. Seeing his vulnerability for once, Farah softens. She tells him about a word her mother used to say whenever she felt lost or scared, kakolukiam. A strange little word, but one that, according to her, could open secret doorways. Not literally, but in the kind of poetic, comforting way you'd expect from someone trying to bring hope to a terrifying prince in a tomb. The prince, still holding onto his last crumbs of his arrogance, brushes off Farah's story, calling it childish. Yeah, real smooth, my guy. But when he turns around, she's suddenly gone. No sound, no trace, nothing but the echo of her voice fading in the dark. Determined and maybe a little panicked, he follows a narrow, twisting passageway that leads to a strange circular chamber with a fountain in its center. The room is surrounded by doorways, but here's the trick. Only the ones where he can hear the water running are real paths. After following the sound, he finally stumbles upon Farah, bathing in a glowing ethereal pool that looks straight out of a dream. The tension off the charts. It's an awkward mix of, well, this is beautiful and oh god, this is not the time. Farah, calm and mysterious, tells the prince to join her in the water, and of course our boy doesn't hesitate. He takes off his gear, steps in, and before long, things get steamy. Let's just say it's the most tasteful PS2 love scene you'll ever see. Overwhelmed by the moment, the prince eventually drifts off, literally falls asleep, big mood. But when he wakes up, everything is different. He's back in the tomb, alone. The soft light is gone, the water's silent, and there's no sign of Farah. Then it hits him. His sword and the dagger of time are missing. She's gone, and the realization stings harder than any sand creature could. Was any of it real or just a beautifully cruel illusion? Farah might have vanished, but she didn't leave without a message. On the ground lies the medallion of time, her medallion. To me, that's her way of saying, I care, but I have to do this alone. It's a quiet, emotional gut punch, and the prince feels it too. Driven by worry and probably guilt, he follows her trail deeper into the ruins, and that's when Destiny drops the single coolest sword in the entire game, the Sword of the Enlightened Warrior. Remember how you needed the dagger of time to finish off sand creatures before? Yeah, forget that. This thing doesn't defeat them, it obliterates them in one hit. You don't even have to rewind time anymore, you just become time's worst nightmare. It's one of those moments where the game basically says, you suffered enough, go have fun. The prince tracks Farah, shouting for her to wait, fight and not use the remaining sands in the dagger. She doesn't listen. When he finally catches up, she's surrounded by sand generals and gets knocked over a ledge above the hourglass of time. He grabs the dagger's blade, stopping her fall, but she realizes he won't let go. With a heavy heart, she makes the choice herself and lets go, falling to her death beside the hourglass. Enraged, the prince tears through the sand creatures, but by the time he finishes, it's already too late to rewind time and save her. Prince steps into the final sand vortex and is flooded with visions of everywhere he's been since the very start of the game. But here's the weird part, these visions feel empty. Usually visions show characters, enemies, or at least the prince himself. Not this time. It's silent, lifeless, almost like a liminal space. What was once full of chaos, traps, and sand creatures now feels hollow. It's as if the game is quietly saying goodbye, a subtle farewell to the player, a final moment of stillness before the conclusion. The prince reaches the base of the room where the hourglass is and mourns Farah's loss. The vizier shows up again, offering him immortality. Basically, stay alive forever, forget everything else. But the prince has already lost too much. Someone he cared for, someone he fell for, is gone. Heartbroken, shattered, mentally and emotionally broken, he refuses the vizier's offer. Death? Fine. Immortality? Not worth it. Filled by grief and rage, he parkours to the top of the hourglass and plunges the dagger into the top of it. The result? A grand rewind. Time itself bending and stretching, giving him one last chance to set things right. Time rewinds, everything resets. The attack on the Maharaja's palace hasn't happened yet. His father is alive, the Maharaja is alive, Farah is alive. But here's the twist, only the user of the dagger remembers the previous timeline. The prince carries every memory, every feeling for Farah, but she doesn't know a thing about him. And, bonus feature, he still has the dagger of time in his possession, even though the attack hasn't occurred yet. Under the cover of night, he sprints towards the Maharaja's palace, slipping into Farah's bedroom. She wakes up, startled to find the apparition of Prince standing there, a man who remembers everything, but whose heart she hasn't met yet. The prince tells Farah about the dagger of time, and when she asks how he got it, he dives into the whole mess, the vizier's betrayal, the sands being unleashed, everything that's gone wrong up to now. See what I mean? This game is literally a story. That's why when the prince dies, he yells, no, 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 that's not how it happened. And when you pause, he's there asking, shall I go on? Everything you've been playing up to this point, it's the prince narrating his own adventure to Farah. It's storytelling wrapped inside gameplay, wrapped inside more storytelling. Meta, dramatic, and somehow still PS2 charming. Night turns to day as the prince finishes his story. Suddenly the vizier bursts into Farah's bedroom, intent on killing her and pinning it on the prince. Our hero drops into his battle stance while Farah retreats to a corner, watching from a safe distance as the fight unfolds. Armed with the staff of time, the vizier can create doubles of himself, essentially becoming invincible, a literal nightmare in human form. The prince hacks and lashes through the waves of clones, refusing to back down. Finally, after an epic struggle, he takes down the last double and strikes the vizier, ending his reign of terror once and for all. The prince hands over the dagger of time to Farah. She squints at him, half amused, half exasperated, and asks, why did you have to come up with such a fantastic story? Well, the answer is obvious. He leans in and kisses her. Of course, she promptly rejects him. Not missing a beat, the prince rewinds time, just like before the kiss, and gives a sly nod. Yeah, you're right, it was just a story. As the prince slips through Farah's balcony, she calls after him, wait, what's your name? He grins and says, Kakolukiam, keep Farah's jaw dropping. That word, her mother's secret phrase, only she's supposed to know it. Mind officially blown. The prince casually slides down a tree, leaving Farah stunned, dagger safe, and the adventure complete. Cut to credits rolling over epic Arabian music because of course this game knows how to end with style. Of course this ending opens a whole bunch of doors, but that's the story for the Prince of Persia Warrior Within video. After all that chaos, battles, betrayals, and time-bending drama, the prince seriously needs a vacation, somewhere far from sand creatures, evil viziers, and impossible parkour. Preferably with a beach, a hammock, and absolutely zero magical artifacts. But we both know that's not happening anytime soon.